I'm Anthony Chow, the Director of the School of Information at San Jose State University, as well as incoming president of the California Library Association, and also incoming president of the Chinese American Librarians Association. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and let me try this. Bienvenidos to all. It is truly my honor and to welcome you to the collective heritage honoring the past, inspiring the future, the role of libraries and librarians serving Latino and Spanish-speaking communities. At the San Jose State School of Information, we are proud to serve one of the most diverse student populations in the nation, if not the world. In fact, our Master of Library and Information Science program educates approximately 36% of all Hispanic and Latino MLS students nationally every year. It's a true testament to our ongoing commitment to access, equity, and representation across the profession. And in fact, we learned this morning or just before this session that we're all iSchool graduates. And so I'm very honored and delighted to know that. We're also deeply honored to mark the 5th year of our renowned Culture and Community Symposia series. And likewise, this is the 5th year we have celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month in partnership with REFORMA and our broader library community. These milestones reflect our school's enduring dedication to celebrating the cultures, stories, and voices that shape our profession and strengthen our communities. Libraries are not just repositories of knowledge, they are living spaces of culture, connection, and empowerment. The work of REFORMA and our library partners across the country continues to ensure that Latino and Spanish-speaking communities are both seen and served, not only through inclusive collections, but through leadership that mirrors the communities we represent. Thank you to REFORMA, our panelists, and to all of you for being part of this important celebration and conversation. Together, we continue to honor collective heritage and inspire the future. Muchas gracias and welcome. Let me turn it over to Loida. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Anthony. Hello, buenos dias. My name is Ady Huertas. I use pronouns she, her, ella, and I'm proud to serve as the current president of REFORMA National. And for those that might not be familiar with REFORMA, REFORMA is a national association that is dedicated to promote library and information services to Latina and Spanish-speaking communities. I wanted to share and start my welcome remarks with a little bit of about the history of REFORMA and where we started. And particularly, I wanted to share a piece that was recently written by Dr. Alicia Long, who is a library and information educator. And I think this really kind of captures a little bit of the essence of the history of REFORMA and some of the conversation that we might be having today. So I'll go ahead and read this for you. The civil rights and social movements of the 1960s brought about many changes to U.S. society and consequently the field of librarianship, a profession that has traditionally been led and predominantly at that time white demographic, was then being confronted with library leaders and workers of color who decided that it was time to change the face, quote unquote, the face of librarianship. As a result, the decade between the 70s and the 80s saw the birth of 5 ethnic caucuses that either affiliated to or became part of ALA, the American Library Association. The association that is now known as REFORMA, the National Association to Promote Library and Information Services to Latino and Spanish-speaking communities, was formed in 1971. By Latino leaders who wanted to ensure that their communities were being served by promoting quality services to Latinos and giving Latino librarians and library workers a place at decision-making spaces in the profession. I think that is still very much what our vision and mission is for REFORMA, and that was the essence of why REFORMA has started. I am really proud to be able to serve as the current president, but also always want to acknowledge the work that has been done to kind of get us where we're at as an association in that representation, and particularly in the library space. I think we continue to play a really important role in empowering our communities and continuing to focus on the equitable access to information, lifelong learning opportunities, and cultural affirmation. So that is what Reforma is about. And I know we'll get more into it in the conversation, but I am really proud to be here to represent Reforma, but also to connect with all of you, and also really, really grateful to iSchool for really creating this partnership and providing these opportunities to be able to feature the work and honor our heritage and our community. So thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing on the conversation.
Thank you so much, Ady Huertas, Reforma President. And welcome again to everyone, and those that in the future will also tune in for a recording. Welcome to Collective Heritage, honoring the past, inspiring the future, the role of libraries and librarians serving Latino and Spanish-speaking communities. We are thrilled to continue this annual tradition at the San Jose State University iSchool during Hispanic Heritage Month, celebrating the essential and evolving role libraries play in honoring Latino cultures and empowering Spanish-speaking communities. This year's theme centers on the library as a space of collective memory, cultural preservation, and community empowerment. And we will explore how libraries uplift voices that have historically been marginalized, develop inclusive collections, and serve as vital hubs for engagement, digital access, and lifelong learning. Our speakers will also reflect on how librarians, through leadership, creativity, and service, are shaping more equitable futures. And we are especially honored to partner with Reforma, as our colleagues have mentioned. Many thanks to Reforma National, to the Reforma chapter at the iSchool, to Dr. Michelle Villagran, and she is a faculty at the iSchool and also a Reforma leader for the invaluable support. And of course, our thanks to Dr. Anthony Chow, director of the San Jose State University iSchool, for his ongoing support of this important celebration. Our keynote panel features Reforma presidents under the title Honoring Collective Heritage, Libraries as Catalysts for Latino and Spanish-speaking Communities. And this first panel, we are welcoming Reforma leaders, and we are honored to hear from three dynamic leaders of Reforma, each of whom has helped shape the national conversation around libraries and Latino communities. This keynote panel brings together Reforma President Ady Huertas, Vice President Edwin Rodarte, and Past President Kenny Garcia, all of whom have championed initiatives focused on equity, cultural preservation, access to information, and much more. We're going to hear about that in a moment. But before, I also want to talk a little bit about the second panel. And this panel is titled Librarians' Role in Supporting Latino and Spanish-Speaking Communities. This second panel highlights a range of voices from across the library field, from academic institutions to K-12 schools. And they are working directly with Latino communities. And we are pleased to welcome to that panel Madeline Peña Feliz. She is a Reforma past president and Associate Director at the Los Angeles Public Library, Erica Esqueda, School Librarian in Texas, and Rebecca Hernandez, an iSchool alum as well, and Diversity Resident Librarian at the UC Davis. And we'll hear about them in a little while, but first, let's get into our opening keynote panel with Ady, Edwin, and Kenny. There are some very important points that we should keep in mind as we go in this conversation, right? There is the historical role, and Ady was actually alluding to part of that in her remarks. So it's important to look at the, how libraries have provided access to information for our communities, Hispanic, Latino communities. And then there are also aspects related to collection development. And also, you need to look forward, right? The future. What is the future vision? How libraries can continue to inspire future generations, right? And I will start then this conversation with our leadership here, looking into how have libraries historically supported literacy and access to information in Hispanic and Latino communities. And then how has that role evolved with the focus on cultural preservation and bilingual services? So there is a lot to unpack here. And I would like to start with Ady.
I didn't want to take up too much space here, so I was hoping that you would start with somebody else. But so I'll be brief because I really do want to hear from my colleagues as well. But I think part of it, like my current title is I am the program manager of youth, family, and equity services. So I have been involved with early literacy efforts pretty much my entire career in libraries. I think from those efforts to like culturally responsive programs, there's a rich history there. And I know REFORMA also acknowledges that history, and Madeline is familiar with this, but we have a history of making sure that our stories are told, that bilingual access to stories, to storytelling is available. So I'm specifically going back to like and it's prior to this, but to Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros, and Noche de Cuentos, right? Which are two initiatives that REFORMA champions. Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros is really intended to highlight at the early literacy efforts, to highlight telling multicultural, diverse stories where our communities can see themselves represented, to highlight bilingual literature, from early literacy, and to support that effort, to be able to bring these stories to youth from the beginning and continue that. And also the tradition of storytelling. And then the tradition of storytelling also gets into Noche de Cuentos, right? That is a rich cultural part of our history, but also we want to continue that throughout the years and still keep it vital in terms of making sure that those efforts are supported and preserving our culture through storytelling, but also making sure that we're bringing folks in to understanding our culture and to sharing our commonalities and our differences through some of these stories, but there's a rich cultural heritage there. And so the REFORMA continues to champion these efforts through grants, through support for including this in our programs when we come together as an association, but also bilingual storytelling is at the kind of forefront of that, and particularly for Spanish speakers as well, and making sure that we're preserving that language and that we're uplifting those stories and making sure that that representation is within our library services and within our profession as well. So I'm kind of just focusing on one piece of it, but I don't want to, go on for too long because I'm really interested in hearing from my colleagues as well.
Yes, and Ady, that it's a very rich legacy from REFORMA, and it's available on reforma.org. There are some resources there, perhaps some information from, the past efforts related to Noche de Cuentos and Dia de los Niños, and people can also go to the ALA ALSC page to learn more about Dia de los Niños. Amazing work impacting communities. Edwin and Kenny, feel free to jump in any moment.
Sure. I think I can just talk a little bit about, what libraries mean for our communities. And historically, I think that libraries have always been that safe and welcoming space just for families overall. And that includes Latino families, I think, as well. They know that this is like a place to come ask questions, to get help without essentially any judgment. And for a lot of people, and especially those that are coming in from other countries, our immigrant population, the library could also be sort of like that first step for them to come and learn English, to study for the citizenship test, to get assistance for their kids and their homework. And so I think that, that access has always been there, and it's always sort of like as long as they know about libraries that they can come in, they can get access, I think, or help. One of the things that I think we struggle is just getting our message out there as libraries and as institutions. To let them know of all of the things that we offer, because it's not just necessarily books, right? It's a myriad of other things. So I think it's ensuring that these libraries also have representation. And so historically, I know that Ady touched on the fact that, librarianship used to be very white at one point. And, we're sort of like tackling that problem, and it's still, percentage-wise an issue. But I feel that those libraries and those institutions that work with communities of color are making an effort to also hire and have staff members that reflect their communities, and so that you could have programming and other services that are specific for them, and that there is representation on site, and that could be language representation, right? So things like programming, things like bilingual story times, things like language access, or even signage, or that when they come into their libraries, now there's a different sign in a different language. At LAPL, I work at LA Public Library. My role is a manager for the emerging tech department, but I've been sort of like blessed that I've been also involved with other efforts. And so those things involve things like programs for our Latino community. I think Madeline is here in the other panel, sort of started it's a bicultural festival. It's called El Libros Fest, that celebrates the Spanish and English literature, and also everything that comes around with it and the culture. And so that's been a very successful event, and it's very well attended. It's sort of like a testament that showcases the need for these sort of programs that we want. I think that libraries maybe are not service providers, or sort of like mirrors that reflect the stories that are in the community. Oral history projects, historically, we've been trying to collect stories that reflect our cultural, like the Latino community, our Asian community, Pacific Islander, basically everything that we have in the Los Angeles area, which is a ton. Yeah, I mean, those are some ways that, historically and nowadays has shifted the focus, and we're ensuring that there's some sort of access and representation for our Latino patrons as well.
You touched on something very important, is about how libraries are attuned to the needs of the community they are serving. And be it that festival you mentioned or other type of programming or efforts, so important in how library services sort of like, we keep at the core providing access to information, right, in different formats, because that's at the core of what we do. But how the themes may change according to the times and to the needs of the community. And that is something that is very real and is still very much part of what libraries do. Kenny?
And I just want to shout out Ady, because she was one of the founding REFORMA members to kind of help start the Children in a Crisis project to provide books to unaccompanied minors. And that was a big REFORMA project to support folks that are in that were kind of in these different centers, but as well as detention centers. And so that was a really impactful REFORMA project that really kind of brought access to information to kids. And just to highlight that REFORMA also operates as part of like a larger collective. And Ady kind of shared that, where it's 5 ethnic caucuses. And I just want to highlight one historical thing is that REFORMA came out of the work that E.J. Josie started with Black Caucus of the American Library Association, and that because of the formation of BCALA, REFORMA formed out of that. And so REFORMA is also part of the Joint Conference of Librarians of Color. So we hope to see you all next year in at the conference. And I do think one other thing is that just to kind of highlight something that's happening in the community that's current, I'm going to just shout out Elizabeth Thomas from the Monterey Peninsula College. That college, I was at the event yesterday. The library participated in a lowrider event that the college put on, where a local lowrider car club went to the college with their cars, and the library was there in front with a makerspace table, setting up button makers, engaging in the community, and that's the kind of work that really supports community engagement.
Loida, would it be okay if I add to Kenny's remarks? Or
absolutely.
And thank you, Kenny, because I feel like when I was listening to Loida about being responsive to the needs at those times, right? And I appreciate you acknowledging both the beginnings of REFORMA and that it started, with the efforts from the Black Caucus, and then also the Children in Crisis Project. But I kind of want to add to that because the Children in Crisis Project, being at the border, I'm in San Diego, we were seeing, this is like almost 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. I'm sorry. I don't even know what year it is this year. It's just over 10 years ago, 2013, where we were seeing a large influx of youth that were in the situation of being unaccompanied minors and being in temporary shelters or in homes that were like connected to like family members, but they weren't sure what was going to happen with their cases. And again, these temporary situations, and sometimes also in detention facilities. And so we recognize the need right away, but I will say, and we recognize, the amount of youth that were coming, especially on the border towns. But I don't think that I would have been able, or through the work that San Diego Public Library did to be involved in this effort to connect youth, and Edwin alluded to it, and we always talk about access, right? And understanding what libraries can provide beyond, being repositories, but really this is about access to empowering our community with information and vital resources, especially for those youth. That would not have been able to happen without the support of REFORMA. So there were multiple folks that were behind that effort. And what we did at San Diego Public Library, and I'll summarize it really quickly, we were receiving youth on a weekly basis, introducing them to the library as a resource. So wherever they went in the country, they could go to their local library to find resources, and also providing an experience at the library, whether it was through the makerspace or through like our arts and culture exhibits, but making sure that every youth left with a book that felt like it was something that they owned, because most of the time these youth didn't have anything that felt like it was part of who they were or something that belonged to them, right? but those books were all provided by Reforma. The effort to be able to even start the conversations with and build the trust with the facilities, with the shelters, all of that was the groundwork that was laid out by Reforma that really facilitated us to be able to do that work here in San Diego, to the extent where at one point we had 2,000, during the pandemic, we had 2,000 girls that were in our convention center in an emergency shelter for unaccompanied youth. And we were able to create a bibliotequita there with those connections that we had to make sure that the youth, and going back to the storytelling, the bibliotequita was like, we would bring story time, but it wasn't story time because most of them were teens. So it was really us sharing our stories and our culture and kind of like taking away from the fact that they couldn't even experience sunlight when they were in the convention center, right? Like that was something that they couldn't even go outside, but we could at least escape through stories and kind of create an experience that could take them away from the chaos that was happening. But none of that would have been possible without the efforts throughout the country and the support from Reforma and the folks that supported this work as well and that gave to this work. So I just wanted to kind of mention that it's definitely, we do this together. We do this together as, like we're talking, when Kenny was talking about JCLC as, the different affiliates, we know that we have shared struggles, but we know that we have shared opportunities and that united, we can actually have a bigger impact.
Definitely, it's very important to honor the past, and I always say that the future, it's here, because we never kind of reach the future, right? This is where we're building, and what Ady says is beautiful, honoring the past, and that also informs and helps us, to anchor our efforts. Really important, and we do have shared support and collaboration with other national associations of librarians of color to this day. And so that is very important to continue strengthening those links. Beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about collection development. Some of you have mentioned collections, right? Bibliotequita and other things. Let's talk about, I know there are some librarians that might have tuned in, also seeking inspiration on, kind of pull information and then to help them build their own library services and so on. And so I think it's important to reflect on strategies, right? And then what strategies have libraries used to build collections that authentically reflect Latino cultures, histories, and voices. And it's important also that we touch on the challenges, right? There are still challenges, and so we cannot kind of miss them. Might be important to voice them and then, kind of spark ideas as well. And so I'll go to Kenny to kind of reverse the order.
Thank you. So I'll shout out my local REFORMA chapter, Bibliotecas para la Gente. They've been hosting a Spanish language book fair for a few years, and it's open to the community. It gets advertised to teachers, librarians, community members that are interested in purchasing Spanish language books from different vendors, and they've been hosting it for the last few years, and it's always been a successful event. So that's just one kind of strategy to kind of support that. And I'll kind of talk about it from the academic librarian perspective. So at my campus, a few of my colleagues just did a DEI audit of the collection, the physical book collection. We are an HSI, a Hispanic serving institution, where our students are 48% Latine. And so we wanted, my colleagues wanted to see how many Latine authors are part of the physical collection. So that's something that if you're interested in academic librarianship, that's one process that you can take to just to look at the collection and see where you're at. I think one of the challenges is that trying to find the appropriate book vendors or the appropriate books, as well as just like making sure that trying to highlight the Latino authors that are already in the collection. So we have actually for Hispanic Heritage Month, we've worked with the Central American Student Association, CAUSA, to highlight Central American authors. So they're the current book display that's in our library. So there's certain things that you can do that are like low hanging fruit, and then things that might take a little longer for you to do.
That's amazing, right? Partnerships and collaborations are really kind of the backbone, right, of what we do. Edwin.
Sure. I think I just wanted to talk about your community and just ensuring that you know your community and that you're on the ground asking people. And this is more for public libraries because it really comes down to what the public want from you as an institution. And so the more connected you are with your constituents and your Latino, familia, then you're basically going to know sort of like what to look out for. And as you know, the Spanish speaking community is very large. And so it's not monolithic. We all have, friends from Argentina or Chile or Colombia versus Mexico, Cuba, or the Dominican Republic. So all of those play a role as well into the sort of like literature that you're trying to attain or obtain for the public. And so I think for me, collection development is one, knowing what sort of like people are reading and what they're interested in. And then two, ensuring that you have access to those books and that literature. And the US is doing, they have vendors that have literature in Spanish, but most, or if not a large portion of them, is translated works, which is fine, right? People still like to read the biggest and the newest, but I think it's good to also have authentic literature. And so ensuring that you work with book distributors that can pull books from other countries. So there's or even having the opportunity to attend a book fair in a different country. ALA has a great program, the ALA Free Fill Pass, which sends bibliotecarios or librarians to the Guadalajara Book Fair, and it's happening, I think, next month. So they provide financial support, a stay at the hotel, and then you basically just have to take yourself there, get permission from your institution, and take some dollars to spend. Because what happens with these at these places is that there's publishing firms or that have small batches of books, and so that's sort of like all that they print for the year. And so if you don't get it there, you probably won't get it anywhere else. And so I think just knowing that, and just like there is a fair here in Mexico, there's one in Spain, there's another one in Colombia, there's one in Argentina. So there's a lot of representations for or places where you can get that literature and then bring it back into the US. So if you can't go to any of those places, find yourself a book distributor. There's a lot of those in the United States, and diversify from just the big name companies, one of which just went under, which, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, but I think that's what I have to say on that sense.
Thank you so much, Edwin. And there are really good Spanish language distributors out there that will work with librarians, really, providing any information they need about the books, about their countries, regions. And sometimes, and this is, my very personal view, having worked in that area, and sometimes I used to kind of prefer working with them than to just looking at lists of big publishing companies and kind of checking, the books that kind of sounded okay. There is something special about that type of relationship. And if librarians are able to do that, I recommend you explore that. Ady.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to talk on the relationship building piece, but I want to go back to the knowing your community piece that Edwin was mentioning. For us, we've noticed a changing landscape within our multilingual language needs here in San Diego. And one of the things that we did last year is we held focus groups of different age groups for folks to find out what folks that speak other languages were seeking in terms of what their interests were, what types of materials were missing from the library, what types of materials they like that we're carrying that they want more of. But we intentionally made sure that we did two things. We did focus groups, but we also put a survey out into the community. And so at every community cultural celebration or any opportunity to engage with community, the library would be there with the survey to see if folks had a couple of minutes to kind of answer questions about anything that they would like to see in other languages at the library collections. And that really helped inform a lot of our selections, and it helped us apply for a grant as well and be successful in obtaining a grant to specifically support multilingual collections for San Diego Public Library. Our collections budget is laughable, and it's always been a challenge for us to make sure that we have a support, financial support for our general collection, and even more so for our language collections and other areas that aren't considered popular. And so for us, it was really intentional to pursue a grant that would support a multilingual collection. And we've been able to obtain that support, again, taking this challenge and this opportunity and bringing in the community voice and what our patrons were asking for, to be able to obtain that support for 2 years to build our collection specifically around language needs, primarily from Spanish speakers and Spanish speakers from various areas as well in various countries. But also we had a large request for Haitian Creole because immigration has played a role in that, right? And so Haitian Creole has been a more difficult kind of challenge to be able to find things that are even being published that are relevant, but it's very much a need in our community. And so we've kind of honed in and try to kind of tap into our colleagues and other folks that are also kind of serving similar populations to find out what they're needing. And then that goes back to the relationship building piece. And I love that Edwin mentioned Feed, the Guadalajara Book Festival. And I love that you mentioned, Loida, the relationships and the things that happen when you're connecting with vendors and sellers that are beyond looking at a list, right? But when you're directly connecting with folks, you are building those collections. And I want to tell people that I have been attending the Guadalajara Book Fair for many, many years. I have never been in collection development. That's never been part of my job, but I saw a need and there wasn't anybody that spoke Spanish in collection development. So I made sure that I volunteered myself to go and select books and work with somebody in collection development so they could teach me kind of things to look for, but I can bring in the cultural awareness, the language piece, and help build relationships. But a lot of those relationships would build through other reformistas that were also attending Field, that also shared their strategies and also shared their contacts. And we've kind of built this network of folks that are really focused on bringing in those collections to their libraries. And we're kind of like, hey, what are you ordering? Because we're probably going to be ordering similar things. So even strategies in terms of tackling this huge, beautiful, wonderful book fair, but it's a lot, right? So if it's your first time, building those networks and building those relationships with the vendors, so they can do follow-ups and they can also assist you with the things that they know and the ins and outs. And even the ins and outs to bringing those collections into your library systems, because a lot of times there's a lot of paperwork and hoops to go through to be able to go outside your general vendors, and those folks that you're working with are sharing how to make that easier too in terms of bringing that into your institution. So I really want to encourage folks to take the leap, and that if you're really passionate about having this representation in your collections, you don't have to be a subject matter expert, because you are an expert of your community, you are an expert of your language, you're an expert of your culture, and that adds value and really enriches those collections to be responsive to those community needs. But also all of these folks here and so many other folks would be available to connect with you. Always reach out to Reforma. We can connect you to the folks that we know are going and the vendors that we've had these lasting relationships with, right? So utilizing those networks.
Beautiful. And that's right. That's where we can say that we have experience with Reforma and the different events. Reforma just had a national Reforma conference. It's, beautiful opportunities to connect. As Ady said, there in countless times when I remember, oh, someone is working on this, let me contact them, because I had connections with them at the different events or on the Reforma listserv. And that takes me to think about, all these connections and past successes and what we're doing today. These are all very good to reflect on then the future, right? And the future starts today, but we have to think, right? For instance, how can libraries continue to serve as inclusive and empowering spaces for future generations of Spanish-speaking patrons in this very increasingly digital world? And I wanted to sound our speakers about this, because we are hearing news about AI taking over, digital this, and emerging technologies that. And so, how that may impact our work and also, the future work that we are doing. And I'd like to start with Edwin, because he is in this area of emerging technologies and all that for a very large public library. So I'm very curious about what he has to say and perhaps some other projects.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I think, especially you mentioned like future generations of Spanish speaking patrons. I think that our future it's really bilingual, and it's going to be bicultural. And so, and then it's going to be digital because everything is moving online. And so I think that libraries have an incredible opportunity to lead in that space. And so we are a lot of the times the first place where people come in to learn something new. And so we need to be prepared to be able to offer answers to those people, or to be able to sort of like demystify what AI is, or what these tools are, and what these spaces are going to look like. And so that looks like ensuring that we have digital literacy in our libraries and our institutions, ensuring that we have AI education, and that also starts with our own staff. And so LA Public Library right now, I'm leading an effort to pull together staff members, and we're going to come up with our own AI policy for our staff members so that we can ensure that we're using our tools and responsibly, and so that we can follow along. And then after that comes along, we're going to turn it over to an event, and we're going to host an AI summit where we're going to be inviting other professionals to attend and learn a little bit more about what we're doing here at LA Public Library, and also have the opportunity for the public to attend some sessions on the topic as well. But in terms of, how do we ensure that Spanish-speaking patrons are also part of this sort of like efforts, is in ensuring that whatever we ultimately end up using, whether that's online, digital, that we have offerings that are in other languages as well. So, ensuring that language access is there as well. So those digital literacy workshops, if you have them in English, make sure that you have some other ones in Spanish as well for our patrons that speak that language. Things that we can sort of like hold accountable some of our vendors, and ensuring that, our apps are just, your library app that the patrons are using can be accessed in multiple languages. A lot of the times the vendors themselves don't have that capacity. And so, how do we hold them accountable to ensure that they have that added on? And it's not just Spanish, it could be other languages too, right? So we have plenty of patrons that require that information online. And so ensuring that we have a presence in that space, and that our information that's online, that it's digital, can be accessed across the board, not just by one sector of our population.
You mentioned something very true. I remember many years ago, our patrons were asking for books in Spanish about cancer topics. And we approached one of our publishers, and they worked with the distributor. And a year or so later, we had books in Spanish about different types of cancer. So, that's one aspect, but you mentioned, accountability, right, from vendors and how we can maybe ask. And so I just wanted to share that, yes, it's possible, but we need to ask. Sometimes they actually don't know, are not aware. And with that, I will go to Kenny.
I'm going to take a different approach to this answer. And I'm thinking about ways that libraries can support content creators within their library, whether it's like providing the equipment for them to create content. And, just kind of thinking about ways that we can kind of bring in what's happening in the current world. So, for example, Bad Bunny told us we have 4 months to learn Spanish before the Super Bowl. So how can libraries kind of put out the resources that they have in their libraries for them to learn Spanish? So kind of thinking about ways to kind of like connect what's happening in the world
Yes.
to what the library provides. And the other thing that I was thinking of was Dr. Gina Garcia's keynote for the REFORMA conference, where she was talking about how can libraries be more inclusive and welcoming. And I'm thinking about artwork and murals that the libraries can have that reflect the communities that they serve. So these are just different ideas to kind of put out there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Absolutely. Even ALA now has a TikTok channel. And so in the United Nations Women, they have also presence in Instagram, TikTok. So, there are different ways of including the users or your groups, right? The ones we are serving. Ady.
Yeah, I love that, Kenny. And also like engaging, right? Engaging through technology with like current events and what's trending and all those things. I'm going to take us maybe a little bit to what you were sharing in terms of what is currently happening in our states and our country, but a little bit of a different direction in terms of being like trusted, like finding that trustworthy information, right? There is a huge impact with immigration right now in many of our cities, many of our states, and our community honestly being scared because they are receiving a lot of information. They're seeing a lot of things online. They're seeing how what used to be current, like relevant sources in terms of know your rights or whatnot are changing quickly based on, the current administration and a new executive order coming through all the time. And so for us as also being responsive and being that kind of really focusing on what is trusted information. And I'm using immigration as an example, but it could be health literacy. We saw it during COVID as well. It could be a lot of different, core sources, but really making sure that our community understands what's trusted information, how are you consuming media, and what is really true, what's not true, like battling that misinformation, right? And continuing those efforts and continuing to provide that support. And one thing that we have as libraries is the community's trust. And I'm speaking from the public library space, but I'm sure it is for different types of libraries. My entire career has been in public libraries, but I cannot mention how many times folks have come in with so many very personal kind of concerns and issues, and looking to the library to kind of provide some guidance for these resources, right? So again, in the digital literacy space, in the space where AI can turn something like that is not true into something that looks really true, or modify any kind of image or voice or whatnot. I really appreciate that Edwin was talking about an AI policy, because it's something that we're also working with our city communications team to develop, because there isn't one. And the library, of course, will be like the first one to say, let's do this together. And I'm talking about networks. I'm going to be looking at LAPL and tapping at Edwin too, and sharing those resources, right? But really making sure that we're demystifying what a lot of like what the impacts have been, and also responsive to those needs, right? When the information changes so quickly, when laws are changing so quickly, and making sure we have the trusted individuals and the trusted sources, and that we're currently updating those resources and we're providing them accessibly, both, digitally and in, print and whatnot, and also kind of building awareness around those resources to make sure that folks know that you can come to the library and at least find, a trusted resource in a time when there's just so many things happening and impacting us and confusing us to an extent, but really also creating that fear. And it's about empowering our community with trusted information.
Thank you so much, Ady. And before we go into the closing of the panel, I really want to pause here. There is a term from the United Nations, and it's information integrity. And they have used this term as, they say it's a positive term, but it really conveys mistrust, fake news, and deep fake, all these things that, as you said, they look like they are real, but they are not. And in some cases, there are pages in different social media, I don't want to mention the names of the companies, but different social media that are pages hosted by bots or by, people that have different type of motives, right? They are pursuing different goals. And libraries have collaborated with the United Nations to provide strategies, as you mentioned, how to help the individuals we serve to really differentiate and know what is, maybe an authority, what is accurate, what are factual. And unfortunately, yes, as you have alluded, our populations are part of this massive group across the world that's being impacted by things that are not real, but they look very real. And so this is an effort that I will also encourage our librarians that are here today, and perhaps those that will tune into the recording, to continue doing what you're doing, because it's part of our core as librarians and our profession. And, access to factual information, and that could be life-saving for so many people as well. And so I'll leave it there, but it's a really important area. But before we go, I'd like to go around kind of a lightning round with our keynote panelists for any final remarks. And so I'll go Edwin, Kenny, and Ady. And thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for the invitation. I think that, it's good to learn about our history, where we come from, and what has been done so far, and where we're progressing, and what is there still to do. So thanks for putting this together and ensuring that, we are still ensuring that our Latino community gets representation and resources, and other folks are interested in knowing what those are.
Thank you, Kenny.
I just want to implore the iSchool students to please join REFORMA. There's a REFORMA school chapter. Get involved in the organization. Get involved in your community, and there's a large community that's here to support you.
Thank you, Ady.
Well, Kenny kind of took it from me, but I appreciate it. Yes, don't forget to utilize Reforma as a resource. It has been a network of beyond colleagues, friends, and familia that I have, turned to for like almost 20 years now. And it's just been lovely to be able to work together in the profession to uplift our histories and our stories and our communities, but also to uplift and lean on each other, right? So Reforma is a network that you can count on. Encourage you to join, encourage you to take advantage of any of the information and resources that we are putting out as well, and continue to participate in events like this. But I also want to leave us with like an upbeat, like celebration note, because, we celebrate who we are and we are who we are throughout the year. But I really want to acknowledge that we are celebrating, our culture, our heritage, our language, and that we need to take time to do that. When things are getting heavy, we really need to take time to reflect on all the beautiful, wonderful things that make us who we are as a community and as individuals, and take time to really acknowledge, and our resistance is going to be our celebration, and vamos a continuar siempre, siempre. Así es que gracias a todos. Muchísimas gracias.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. And now we are going to move to our second panel. We really have experts from different areas today, and that is what is beautiful about the event, because of their perspectives and the wealth of knowledge that they bring according to their experiences. So I hope that everyone is finding inspiration today. Our second panel is titled Librarians' Role in Supporting Latino and Spanish-Speaking Communities. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're welcoming Madeline Peña Feliz, Reforma past president, Erika Esqueda from Texas, a school librarian, and Rebecca Hernandez, a diversity resident librarian at UC Davis. We're going to talk, I would like to talk about different areas like community engagement, partnerships and outreach, education and youth services. I mean, there is so much for us to talk about today, but we can maybe start with some initial thoughts about what are some effective approaches libraries have used to authentically engage Latino communities in programming and decision making. And I know you all come from different angles, so I am looking forward to your remarks. I will start with Madeline.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Loida, and I'm so happy to be here today with so many great colleagues celebrating Latino Heritage Month, the closing of Latino Heritage Month with our iSchool. So some effective approaches to authentically engage Latino communities. I will talk about my experience working with the Los Angeles Public Library, been there for 18 years now this month. And, Los Angeles is Latino community, a lot of Latinos in LA, as many of you know. And, not necessarily because you have a large Latino community, it doesn't mean that the public is, aware in general of what everything the library has to offer, or that the approach is necessarily the best to engage with a specific community. But I'm happy to say that at LAPL, I feel we're doing very intentional outreach, intentional ways to approach the Latino and Spanish-speaking communities. So one example is by having dedicated bilingual speaking staff. There's outreach staff, the positions go bilingual outreach librarian. There are 6 of them, and there are additional bilingual speaking Spanish librarians doing outreach. So I think that guarantees you, like sometimes I've mentioned, when you're sharing statistics, right, and you say, well, we reached this month 10,000 people through outreach, and half of them were Spanish speakers. You can say that because you have Spanish speaking staff providing the service, right? working with the community. If you have zero Spanish speaking staff, you won't be able to say that half of those the interactions were in Spanish, So that's, I think, number one is being intentional. So people, representing the culture, speaking the language, and also going out to those communities and spaces where the Latino community participates, and Spanish-speaking community. For example, I know Edwin mentioned the Los Angeles Libros Festival. That was a staff-led initiative, a program to celebrate Latino Heritage Month and to celebrate bilingualism in Los Angeles. And it is like the flagship event for Latino heritage in Los Angeles, and the first ever bilingual book festival in LA. And, just a great event, a great way for us to represent that intentional approach to serving the community. Another example I can tell you is we were recently going through the strategic planning process. It's an ongoing process, but we were like approaching the community, and there was that intentionality to, have the surveys in different languages. And for Spanish speakers, the bilingual Irish librarians did an intentional approach to those community events and spaces to make sure that they were represented and they were able to provide their input on what the future of their library should be. So I think that's the intentionality, putting their resources to make sure, make it a priority from the beginning. I think that's extremely important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amazing work. We'll go to Rebecca now.
Yes. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. As was mentioned, I work in an academic library, so a college library. So my perspective, I guess, was going to come and be more rooted in that because that's my experience. And I'm a newbie librarian, and I'm in a temporary role. So those are kind of the things that I'm balancing right now. But in terms of community engagement, I would say just some things that other panelists have already shared this morning that really struck a chord with me. Ady, when Ady mentioned that how important it is for us to be able to celebrate our beautiful, wonderful cultura. I really try to bring that into any of the programming that I do, and particularly trying to celebrate and explore and make space for how our communities share knowledge and create knowledge. So I think programming that is focused sometimes on a less traditional academic lens, sometimes like in a college library, we can really focus on like what is research, what is just finding and navigating sources and databases, which is really important. But I think just being really intentional about making space for the ways that we, the communal ways that we share information, that we learn, that we create information that may not always be recognized as like an information sharing practice. So I think bringing that intentionality with some programming. Other things that stuck out to me that I'm thinking about, I'm really also focused on the partnership and outreach component, because I don't think you can like really effectively engage a community without realizing how interconnected we are like on campus. So, but I have some thoughts that I'll share when we get more to partnership and outreach. But for engagement, I also think if we're sometimes just asking the questions of our communities, like when I'm having conversations with students in student spaces, like what makes you feel like welcoming, like what do you hope for from a library, like how, like asking questions and being responsive to the feedback that we might receive. Some things that have stuck out to me just is that the library can feel like a kind of drab space. The academic library can feel like kind of like a drab space. So how do we even just bring some color, some like diverse imagery, like bring collections to the forefront to just make spaces feel more welcoming for students? And then how do we be responsive to the feedback that we're actually receiving? So just again, in like being intentional about workshops, programming, and just making the space feel one that is welcoming of diverse culturas. So I think those are my initial surface thoughts for the community and engagement piece.
It's very layered, right? Very, it could be complex, where we're trying to achieve, right, to reach our communities. So all those thoughts are very much appreciated. Now we go to school libraries. Erica.
So I'm just listening and nodding because I think we're all like trying to do the same thing, and I'm making notes about like just being intentional and giving our patrons like that sense of ownership, like they're part of the library as well. But I think at the middle school level, it really starts with the representation, the kids seeing themselves in the collection and in the programming that's all year long, not just highlighted during Hispanic Heritage Month, especially where I work, because I'm also by the border, 15 minutes I'm in Mission Junior High. So my kids are predominantly Hispanic. So they need to be able to see that in their library. And I'm just going to go ahead and again share like people are about their experiences. So I was really fortunate that I was given a grant this past summer by the Texas Library Association and HEB. And so with that, I was able to do a program that started in the summer and it's continuing to go through the year. And it was called Roots of Reading, and just sharing, celebrating Latinx storytelling. So each grade level, we're 3 grade levels here at my middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So each grade level focused on a book. And not only that, but we were able to have the author visit, so the kids make that connection. And I want it to be like some exciting event for them. And it's turned out that way so far. So for 6th grade, and I'm going to show the book, we had Diana Lopez, and you can't see it because it's blurred, but it was Felice and the Wailing Woman. And again, sharing the storytelling. It talks about like folklore in that our kids love and grew up with, and so they're able to share their own stories about it, like La Lechuza, and this one talks about La Llorona, and they just love it because it's something they grow up with. And so 7th grade is doing Mexikid, which is a graphic novel by Pedro Martin. And then 8th grade is reading They Call Me Güero, which is a book in verse by a local author, David Bowles. And again, making those connections with the local authors so we can share those stories with the kids. And then they're able to have that book, like each kid in the certain grade level is taking home that book to keep on their own, signed by the author. Like, so it's a very special event for them. And then again, at the end of this, when it ends, I want to get that feedback, so I can see how I can make events like this better or more connected to our kids and to our community. So getting that feedback. I have a group of library ambassadors, my students, because here I'm like a one-man show in the school setting. So my library ambassadors also serve as like my student advisory committee, giving back that feedback of what they want to see as far as programming and collection in our library. And I always try to say, hey, this is what's happening at your library. Look what's happening at your library, because this place does not belong to me. It belongs to all of them. But yeah, and I guess that was all I had to say about that one. But yes, and just trying to be present in like the different, like the parental events that are happening, so they know that what's available for their kids and what kind of bilingual collection we have available for them as well.
That's beautiful, beautiful examples from school libraries. You all have really very specific points about different type of libraries or library settings, and all kind of speak to the same thing, right? Community engagement and in being intentional and really being present. So I hope our attendees are taking notes. And someone here mentioned, I think it was Erica, mentioned grants and, some type of collaborations, right? That could be also partnerships. And so those are, in my experience, what make possible many of our programs and services at libraries. And so to talk a little bit about that, let's explore then what successful partnerships have helped libraries better serve Latino communities and what lessons can be shared. And I will start with Rebecca, and I'll go around the opposite way.
Okay, yes. So I mentioned before that, we started off this panel segment focused on community engagement, but I think there is that inherent interconnectedness between how do we engage community, how do we build our partnerships, how do we be intentional about our outreach. So a little bit more. I was actually an undergraduate at UC Davis, which is where I'm working now. So although I was an undergraduate over 10 years ago, I had some familiarity with the space in terms of, I was a Chicanx studies major. I had some familiarity with some of the spaces on campus that really supported, Latin students or students from diverse backgrounds. So I came into my position with some familiarity of those spaces. So I knew when I, got into this position as a temporary librarian that I wanted to return to those spaces to make contact with folks and just let them know that, I was there and wanted to be able to support students however I could. So going back to the department was very useful. That Chicanx studies department what was one way that I, started to approach partnership and outreach was just within a department that serves a lot of Latin students academically, and then also our retention initiative, our Latin student retention initiative, which is El Centro. And we already had a pretty strong partnership with El Centro because of our former librarian Roberto Delgadillo, who has since he's crossed over, but he started that partnership with El Centro, and my current colleague Nancy Wallace, who's also an iSchool alum, she's helped to nurture that since his crossing, and since I've stepped into this role, we've worked on continuing to build that. But with that partnership, I would say we've been successful in doing some event planning where we're collaborating in the event planning. I think something successful that we did was a literary event, Flor y Canto, Xochitl in Cuitcat. And so the goal of that was, working with El Centro and just creating a space within the library that really celebrated our wonderful literary traditions, right? And I think at the beginning of this panel, Ady as well mentioned that, REFORMA started with the social movements and civil rights movements in the 70s, and that's where Flor y Canto started as well. So, going back to those kind of traditional kind of celebrations that we've had, and making space for those. So it was a wonderful event. That's something. And then let's see, again, from the academic library perspective, I'd say that the outreach work in the department has been useful in that, the instructors recognize that there's someone there that they can send students to for like one-on-one referrals. And so how I engage with students who are, working on their assignments and helping them to familiarize themselves with the different resources of the library, and just kind of encourage them, what are they interested in? How do we find materials that are relevant? And yeah, so I think I don't want to ramble too much, but those are the first things that came to mind in terms of partnership and outreach, is finding other spaces on your campus who are doing work that is similar to what you want to be doing, who you want to be serving, and showing up for their events, seeing if there's any collaborations that you can do, that's what I have to share for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Madeline.
Thank you, Loida. The Los Angeles Public Library is such a large institution where you have many different partnerships. So you have different departments dealing with different partners. So I'm going to focus on the partners that I work with, or my departments work with outreach in specific, community outreach department. And something that I think is really important, especially for public libraries, is to partner with other city entities, other municipal entities, because they're serving the same community, and they have that call to serve the community, right? And we've found very successful to work with the Department of Aging. We have visited many of the senior centers and do presentations, many of them in Spanish, many of the seniors being served by the senior centers sponsored by the city are Spanish speakers. We work with the family services to visit the family source centers, which also have a lot of Spanish speakers and Latinos as their clients. And working with the housing authority to visit some of those housing projects that are being served by the city to provide programming at the location, programming for youth, for seniors, for adults, programming related to building their skills for job seekers. And again, the majority are Latino, Spanish-speaking communities. So leveraging that, the shared mission and shared resources. Another example is for the Los Angeles Libros Festival. We partnered with REFORMA, the local chapter of REFORMA in LA, to put that event together. They bring that perspective of, Latino librarians and workers, Spanish speakers, and working throughout Southern California, not only in Los Angeles, right? And they support the event with, vision and actually volunteer work and providing programming at the event. And partnering with a bookstore. Is the only children's bookstore in Los Angeles. Yes, the only, I know, believe it or not. Children's bookstore with, in Spanish in LA, and we partner with them, also using their expertise to help us plan this event. They used to do the programming for the LA Time Festival of Books in Spanish for kids and families. So these are a couple of successful partnership examples, but also, someone that may not be as obvious is we partner with the Mexican consulate, and we visit the Mexican consulate about twice a month, and we sign up people for library cards. We talk to them about the library resources. And because the consulate, they have a waiting room with a lot of people. These are many of them are monolingual Spanish speakers, right? And this is an audience that we have there. That's part of the intentionality, that we want to be in that space. So we can let those community members who, the library is there for them, or the free resources they can access through the library. And, there's something that you can think of, the consulates, and then the bookstores, other community organizations, and of course, your municipal partners, the ones serving the constituents and the residents of the city.
So this is also very interesting work, right? But it takes some time for our attendees. It's very important to nurture those relationships, as our speakers so far have mentioned. Erica.
So I want to start with something that this is my 10th year. Yeah, I'm going into my 10th year, and this is only, I guess, the second year that I've really taken an active role in my library association. So my Texas Library Association they're the reason that I was able to get that grant to do that reading program, but also the networking within there. I find a lot of strength with the other librarians, and they are from different public, academic specialties. So you're able to share a lot of experience and get a lot of feedback to see how you can do or run your library program better. So there's a lot of value in that. I'm actually the chair-elect for our district, which covers 26 counties. And we just had our first district meeting for the year. And there's just so much. When you bring librarians together, there's so much that you can learn from there and take back. But not just that. Another thing I wanted to touch on that Rebecca had said is talking about being present and showing up for the events and programs that the other maybe the other departments are doing. And I see that like for me that comes into play with like getting help from my local museum or wanting to take part, wanted to do a collaboration with them. I need to be visible at their event so that they can build that trust with me and know that this is going to be a good event that I'm gonna put work into and and hopefully be a valuable asset to them. So yeah, my local museum is one that we've worked with before. Our campus library, our academic library had a really cool event showcasing alebrijes. Like they were having kids of all ages turn them in and make it into like an art display. So that was a cool event for the kids to take part in. But yeah, I'll reach out to anybody and everybody. I know I also reached out to the academic librarians to get a speaker to close off an event that I'm doing. And they forwarded me to someone who was studying Chicano literature. He was doing his master's on that. And he wanted to come out. And you'd be surprised how many people will say yes. Yes, they're just waiting for somebody to ask, you know. So I might be an introvert, but if I'm asking for my kids, I'll ask because you'll get a lot of yeses that way.
That's so important. And I like that you also mentioned professional associations and professional groups, because we can really create very powerful resources with them. Erica, were you still speaking? Because I saw you were mute, but you were still... Okay,
Sorry,
good.
I had a student in here.
Okay. This is real time happening. And as a matter of fact, for this event today, as we know, we are collaborating with REFORMA National and also with the student chapter at the iSchool. And so very important highlights. And you mentioned these partnerships are in place or established or, nurture to provide different programming services. And I think it's important for us to kind of pause a moment and talk about youth services, right? Ady was mentioning earlier how REFORMA has established some project to serve youth or to help librarians serve these populations. So important, right? Children, adolescents, teens, perhaps. And they are here. Sometimes they're bilingual, sometimes they're not, but they're still Latinos. And so what we do, right? And so, yeah, it's important. So let's talk about, for instance, what role do libraries play in supporting bilingual education and youth development in Latino communities? I think this is, very central to our communities and to how libraries can impact and help communities, support communities. And so I would like to go to Madeline first, if she has something to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Loida. So yes, bilingualism. I'll touch on some different points from the my work with the Los Angeles Public Library. Events. Back to the Los Angeles Libros Festival, collections. Right, we have very robust collections in Spanish and bilingual, both physical collections. And for youth, but also digital collections like Make Make. If you haven't heard of them, is a wonderful interactive platform with really wonderful books in Spanish and bilingual. And we provide access to that platform to our, to our families and youth. And Another way we provide access is through a service that we have. It's called Community Bookshelf, and we have some of those community bookshelves. They're like mini libraries, bookshelf placed in a community space where we want to emphasize, literacy and encourage that. Usually, where families are waiting for something for a service like clinics, etc. A barber shop, a medical clinic, even the courthouse. And depending on the location, many of our materials provided are bilingual and are in Spanish. And going back to the word access, right? The Los Angeles Public Library has a partnership with the Los Angeles Unified School District. And automatically, every student in the LA Unified School District gets a library card automatically. They have access to these collections. They have access to Libby. They have access to, our physical materials and everything that's available online, all the databases, etc. Another way that we connect is visiting the schools. Of course, the librarians need to visit schools. And we provide presentations and workshops for parents, for bilingual parents, in Spanish about how they can take advantage of everything the library has to offer for their kids' education and also for themselves. And a great partnership I think I like to emphasize is from the community outreach team. They have partnered with these organizations, and I believe the name is Global Arts, and they provide workshops for kids, right? But while their parents are waiting for the kids to get their services, they also have a creative writing workshop in Spanish for parents waiting for it. So we have partnered with them to, of course, provide information, access to library resources, but also we have these that Edwin Rodarte actually helped us acquire. We call it a short story dispenser, right? So it is a machine, you push a button and it will print a short story for you. But guess what? Those parents, those mothers, I've met some of them who are writing short stories and poems through this creative writing class in Spanish. Their artwork is available for us to the community through our short story dispenser. So when we go out to the community and we bring the short story cube with us and go to an event, people can print the story in Spanish and they can read what these moms are creating through a partnership within the library. So these are some examples I like to highlight. And going back to grants, lastly, we do receive the California State Library summer lunch grant for us to provide services outside the library to at locations where kids go to have the free summer lunches. And of course, many of them in Spanish. Thanks to those funds, we're able to do 3 visits. We bring them books, many of them in Spanish. We bring them enrichment presentation. We sign them up for library cards. We provide story time. And we do it in a very targeted way, very intentional, making sure that we are reaching out, the underserved communities and people who with barriers to access. So yeah, that's a little bit about how we engage youth, education and youth, through the outreach services.
Amazing work. And I hope that it's inspiring our colleagues that are have joined us today. I'd like to go to Rebecca now, kind of like to put academics in the middle of our conversation.
Yes, thank you. So for this one, how I think about education and just lifelong learning and is supporting, really trying to focus on being supportive of incorporating and acknowledging and validating and making space for our just traditional ways of learning. So I think that oftentimes, like especially in the academic institutions, where I think I mentioned can be really focused on just Western ways of knowing, more scientific, even though our gente were always very scientific and just wonderful, creators, innovators. But yeah, just I'm always kind of trying to balance this the borderlands of, bringing in our traditional ways of knowing and also being and existing and creating in an academic space. So let's see. I think what I try to do is just really incorporate the traditional our traditional ways of knowing and just create approach my library instruction, information instruction from a non-Western knowledge framework. When I'm working with students, I, always try to just primarily make sure that I'm getting to know my students. I'm really asking questions about, what they are interested in, what they're studying, what they're liking, what they're not liking, just showing a lot of respect for who they are, really always trying to give reminders of, the fact that they came to the institution already with so much knowledge, and just encouraging students to reflect on the knowledge that they come into the institutions with, and encouraging them to reflect on it, use it, apply it, and recognizing that the university can be a stressful place, but really just encouraging them, reminding them that their questions, interests, perspectives are really needed in the university, and that we're lucky to have them, and that we're both learners. So I think, just education in the university, I work primarily with the undergraduates, but I try to really expand the way that I approach the information instruction, because like I said, a lot of times we're showing about the library catalog, databases, evaluating information sources for credibility, those types of things. But I try to think about it, even information sources. Our information sources may not always just be, textual, written, found in books. It can be from our ceremonias. They can be from our elders, stories. So, bringing that into the conversation, that these are forms of information that we can think about, that we can use, that are credible. And then always making space for the reflection, for students to think about, like, what are our ways of knowing? How do we learn? Because that's very important, and I think can be sometimes under recognized or brought into the classroom. So I think that's the main kind of thought, is really just how I try to approach information and instruction with the students, and just kind of build those relationships and nurture and support us students. Those are the first things that are on my mind right now. So
very valuable insights on, how to do this, because it could be challenging. And if you are a librarian that perhaps doesn't share the experience of being Latino, right, or Latine. And then I think these insights you have shared with us today can be very helpful. Intentionality, being present, but also respectful, and kind of like trying to find out more about the library users that we are serving. So thank you so much for that. And now we go to Erica.
So again, I'm just listening and I'm nodding my head. I think we're all trying to build that same positive atmosphere and build those relationships and make the library a welcoming place. While I was doing my master's, I did 2 years working at the university, and then I went back to public education. And it's so weird because I would look at those kids coming in, stressed, these undergrads. And it's the same faces that I see on my kids in middle school. They're just a little bit more grown, but you're still trying to get them to learn and feel comfortable. And as far as doing that in the middle school arena, I just want them to celebrate their bilingualism, not feel like it's a barrier, not feel like it's one more thing that they have to get past. It's something that it's something exceptional about them. So I try to be, again, intentional in purchasing my library collection, making sure that I have those high interest books, those graphic novels that everybody wants, also in my Spanish section. It's not this old section that nobody's touched in forever, and so they have nothing, that they're able to pick up and read and be excited about. Again, Texas is super special with its legislation, and that's become difficult to keep our collection up to date in the English and Spanish. But again, looking for those grants. I mean, there's specific grants out there that are working to keep those diverse books on the shelves for our kids. So that's something I'm always trying to do. And then my kids are in middle school, but they love a good read aloud as much as an elementary kid would, bringing those books out, reading them in English and Spanish, having those book talks, those author spotlights on our Latinx authors and stories. Something that I've been wanting to do, and I just haven't gotten to it on my list, is just be more present in the parental departments. Like when they have their meetings, make sure that I'm there, just to always be sharing like the resources that are available to our kids, but to our parents as well. Because we can tell our kids to read and, take advantage of the resources. But the best thing that's ever going to make them want to do that is modeling. When they see their parents reading, picking up those books or taking advantage of the resources that we have, that's when they'll say, oh, okay, maybe I'll, that's important. That's something I need to be doing. But yeah, just trying to be more, again, intentional in all the things that I do, not just my programming, but my collection and what I'm doing out there with the parents as well.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned something about, bilingualism, and remind me, yesterday I was speaking to an LIS class, and they actually asked me if when I go to different forums internationally, if knowing another language than English is important. And how is that important? And so we had a really good conversation with library information science students that were intrigued by that. And, there are there's a lot of research and innovation that is still not in English. And if it's not in English, it kind of like didn't happen, right? Because it's not discoverable for everybody. And then there is this part of the world that thinks that things in English, those are the only things that have happened. And so there is much more to that, as we know. But we had a really interesting conversation, and it actually it came out of someone knowing that I am from Puerto Rico and that Bunny, and then they have this time to learn Spanish. So it really it's an opportunity. As one of our speakers in the opening keynote mentioned, it's an opportunity to kind of like introduce culture, language, and have insightful conversations around that. And all these students, I think very few of them were from different backgrounds than the population that we serve. And so I was glad that they were interested in these matters. But now time is running. And so we still have a few more minutes for this panel. And but before we go, I would like to go around and ask our speakers if they have final remarks related to anything that we have touched on today, or something else that you don't want to miss the opportunity to share with our attendees and colleagues. I'll go to Madeline and then just work back like that.
Thank you, Loida. I just want to mention how important it is to have, bilingual staff, multicultural staff at libraries, and how offering that bilingual pay, whether it is, a percentage or a stipend or, whatever the format, I think it is extremely important having that intentionality. And, and sometimes, using, REFORMA as a resource, also policies like, for example, for the city of LA is the language access plan. That's something that we can use kind of to justify the hiring of bicultural staff. It's a recent addition to the city, believe it or not, something that was completed about 3 years ago, and that the library had a major role in making that happen in collaboration with other city departments. And of course, you mentioned earlier that this event is being also organized in partnership with the student chapter at here San Jose State University. And I'm very proud that when I was Reforma president, I collaborated with Dr. Michelle Villagran. She was the education chair. I appointed her and I asked her, could you make this happen? And that's, this student chapter is something that came out of my year as Reforma president, something that I'm very proud of. So thank you for everyone. It's such a group that's so engaged. I see their events, the cafecitos, etc. So keep up the great work. And I'm glad that this event is being offered through their partnership as well. And happy end to the Latino Heritage Month, but we keep celebrating, as one of my colleagues mentioned, it's a year-round celebration. We are part of this community, our own communities, and the community through in this country, in this world, and we matter, we're important, and we need to celebrate our culture. We are, as Latinos, come from so many different places, have so many different backgrounds. It's not just one story. We have a lot that we share, a lot of differences that we need to also celebrate. So, felicidades, to everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Madeline. I'd like to go to Erica.
So this is wonderful being a part of this panel. It was just nice to hear how much representation matters. It matters so much to, at every stage as our kids go through education, as our kids go through life. And when they see people in these positions, in these education positions that share their language, that share their culture, that's going to bring down that wall and hopefully make it easier for them to take in everything they can when they're coming through our institutions and feel that sense of belonging, not separation, but really like they're part of their education. They're taking ownership of it. They're really realizing that these people in these places are reflecting themselves, and they're able to see that, and it's just an incredible cultural experience.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'd like to close these final remarks with Rebecca Hernandez. I actually get so happy when I see Latinos in positions that can impact change in different institutions, but having someone that is working for diversity and in the title in a higher ed education is, to me, that type of representation is very important. And so it's great that we had Rebecca today, and this was a direct result from the students. So it's so wonderful, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here in community with you all. Virtually, it was very meaningful. This is my first time being on a panel, like I said. I want to give thanks to Lilia, who is a colleague of mine at UC Davis and who invited me to participate. So I want to just say thank you for thinking of me and extending this invitation. I'm in a temporary position and the diversity resident role is out the door, but I'm happy to be here now and grateful for the experiences that I've gained, in this time. For my last thoughts, something that came to mind that I forgot to mention, when I'm doing outreach and I'm engaged in like any tabling, something that I've found that is useful for me is I like to just, bring, we have a runner that says UC Davis Library, but I also like to bring textiles from home that are just colorful and beautiful. And I also like to bring medicina. So I'll bring, plantitas like the romero, sage, pericon that I feel ground me, but also really help just make a nice welcoming tabling booth for students to come up and engage with me in. So it's like taking care of myself, but also taking care of my students, having a nice space. So trying to bring the plantitas and I, have that connection with my ma too, who, is always in her jardín. So just that is a little tips for anyone thinking about that. And then also for the education sphere and bilingual education, I didn't really speak to that too much, but a thought that came to me I forgot to mention was making sure that we're elevating the scholarship of scholars of color when we're talking with students about evaluating resources, having conversations about the inequities in publishing, scholarly communications, and even in, like, an example that was shared with me is that within South America, Latin America, there's like the highest amount of like bird population, but a lot of the research scholarship that's come has been from like the US or from, outside researchers going into studies. So just kind of having these conversations about some of these inequities and that, Western publications are not always a superior, seeking out publications in other languages is very important as well. So just being aware and having those conversations with students or bringing that into the classroom. So I think that's what I have. And I'm just, again, very grateful for all of the panelists and for you for facilitating. So thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today for Collective Heritage. Honoring the past, inspiring the future. We've heard powerful insights about the vital roles libraries play in preserving cultural identity, expanding access, and supporting the diverse voices of Latinos and Spanish-speaking communities. And we are very proud to continue this annual celebration between the San Jose State University iSchool, or by the iSchool, and with the our official partner, REFORMA, including REFORMA National, the REFORMA iSchool chapter, and everyone helping make today's event possible. And a special thank you as well to our stellar panelists and keynote speakers for sharing their work, stories, inspiration, and for their time. And as we reflect on what we've learned today, may we carry these conversations forward, continuing to build inclusive libraries that honor heritage, foster community, and support future generations. So thank you so much and muchas gracias.